What's up? What's up? It's time for Done Way Past Funny with your host, G.D. Fenderson. Join us as we take a look back at the early works of seasoned comedians before they were seasoned with this week's guest, Alvaro Gamboa. It's time to get down and get dope with Done Way Past Funny. Hi, I'm G.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist. Thank you for joining us as we continue our interview with comedian Alvaro Gamboa. Enjoy. Now, I have to ask, now, do you think it was bad comedy? Not bad comedy, but because do you think it was because, not the material, because I actually believe your material is funny, but do you think it's because you did Anglo-based humor, or do you think it's because your Spanish wasn't up to snuff, and so there were nuances in the language? In other words, like, okay, I don't speak a second language, so I can fuck around. I'm sorry, yeah, no, I can read other languages, but I'm not around it enough to speak it fluently. You know, like I even had trouble, like I said, with your name because of the way I do. You know, my Anglicized, my English version of grammar and stuff. But I can read things because I used to speak French. I had very, very rudimentary Spanish skills. I had beginning Chinese, Russian. I could read Russian, but I couldn't speak it as well as I could read it. But I could read it.
Yeah, that's better than me, brother.
And Hebrew. And my Hebrew at one point was so good that my rabbi, I'm not Jewish, but I call him my rabbi because he was a friend of mine. He used to teach Hebrew to his non-Hebrew speaking, I don't want to say parishioners because I forgot, but the people in his synagogue. He was teaching Hebrew, and he'd come in with these Hebrew lessons, and Hebrew is a very, very specific language when it's written down. There's like dots and stuff like that. And there was a dot from the copying machine, which put it on the paper. And so I stopped and I said, "Excuse me, Rabbi, you know, this dot here?" I said, "I should run these pages over again because this dot is going to make this look wrong. Because this is not, you know, that dot shouldn't be there." And he says, "My God," he goes, "your Hebrew is actually better than a lot of my students." And so he and I became friends, you know. So my Hebrew used to be very good, but my Hebrew was not conversational Hebrew. My Hebrew was prayer Hebrew. I had a Hebrew prayer Bible, a Hebrew prayer book, and so all of my Hebrew that I knew how to speak, if it wasn't in that prayer book, I couldn't speak it. So I couldn't ask you. I couldn't ask you how you were doing today, but I could probably ask you, you know. I could probably ask you something else as long as you dealt with something in the prayer book, you know. So
totally, yeah, I totally resonate with that. For me specifically, I feel like it was the language barrier because like I was at the show watching the show, you know, trying to get a sense for it, and like again, that was my first ever Spanish comedy show, watching and performing, and so I'm watching, I'm in the back, and like I'm trying to piece together the language because like not every Latin person speaks the same Spanish, right?
yes.
So I'm trying to piece those together, but then also like in my head, I'm trying to like look at kind of like Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover. I'm kind of like trying to like look at the comedy structure and laws, and I'm like, okay, end on the funny pauses. Okay, the laws in comedy are universal no matter what the language. So like that works out, you know.
Right.
But in terms of like the language barrier, I had that exact same problem. I grew up religious. Spanish was my first language, and I spoke it at home. I spoke it in the church up until like the time I needed to go to school, which is American public school education. So we were going to assimilate, damn it. We were going to get as America as we can. And I ended up losing Spanish as a result. I picked it up in my adulthood, which is super amazing. I've been able to travel to Latin American countries where my parents are from and be able to speak fluently in Spanish. Not like fluent, but we getting there. Like at the show, I had a comic tell me that my Spanish sounds like broken Spanish, but also it sounds like formal Spanish. Like I didn't realize it until after the fact. Like, oh, this is religious Spanish that I'm speaking, bro. And like
Right. Okay.
it pissed me off because like I like raunchy humor, but I don't like performing raunchy humor, right?
Right.
And so at the show, like everyone's performing like the raunchiest bar jokes that they can have that they can. Where like in Spanish, like you will colloquially hear people refer to each other as slurs with like
Right.
the kindest terms of endearment, right? And like anywhere else in the world that is not acceptable. Like I would be canceled in Brooklyn if I was,
Yes. Like.
communicating like how Latin people speak. But even like back to the clip in the opener, like I had to learn a bunch throughout the years of like, in your opener, like my opener there specifically, I remember like it was cold that day and
Right.
I'm a tropical boy, so I was not dealing well with the cold. I don't know why I felt it with I felt the urge to like be riff and be raunchy in terms of like the weather. Like that was something to bond with. Like now I recognize a couple of things where like number one, you have 7 to 10 seconds to hook the audience in, no matter what. It doesn't matter if they're a mainstream coded white room. It doesn't matter if they're a secondary, tertiary room, either black or Spanish rooms. You have 7 to 10 seconds. Everything else is nonsense, right? Number two, I don't like being raunchy. So like all the raunchy stuff I was cringing at because I try to be as cleanly as possible, because that's how you get work, but also because it doesn't like necessarily appeal to me like the shock jock
Right.
edgy raunchy humor. Like
Right.
I feel like I could be edgy without, like I feel like I could push the envelope without being an edge lord, right?
Right.
So those are a couple of things. But to the Spanish show specifically, there's a there was like the language barrier that I mentioned, but there's also like a cultural difference where like Latin people that were born and raised in Latin American countries and then moved to America have a vastly different worldview, perspective, POV than me, a Latin American individual who was born and raised in Miami, Florida.
Right.
Ironically enough, home of pit bull and pit bulls, actual pit bulls, right?
Now, see, I hope I don't want to stick. Well, I want to get to other things as well, but
Please, by
the
all means.
now, uh, damn it. Okay, I'm still stuck on the whole Spanish thing because for me, because it's new to me. I like talking to people that can do things that I cannot do, or
Yeah,
that
hell yeah.
I can't, or that like I could probably learn Spanish and do a Spanish set. I'm not going to because there's too many nuances. There's too many nuances in what I do with the English language, and it would take me a lifetime to have that same kind of nuance and confidence in a second language, regardless. You know,
Mhm.
like I just I use like I like to play with homonyms and different sounds and breaking up words
Yeah.
into syllables, which I could not do in Spanish. But now,
And that's actually what I was doing at the show, where like, I enjoy, metaphors,
yes,
analogies, facsimiles. I enjoy all of these, puns, all of these comedic tools. And so in my mind at the show, I'm looking at what everyone is doing and like connecting the dots. But the thing with the language barrier specifically is that Spanish and English are reversed, right? So like I would say like in English, if a sentence is like noun and verb, you have to flip it because of the subjunctive, that where in Spanish it becomes verb noun, right? And
right,
so the wonderful thing about English is that like you could do that same sentence, instead of it being noun verb, you can verb noun it.
yes,
But even in Spanish, because of the subjunctive and the grammar laws, you still have to flip it, where it would be, if you flip it and it's verb noun, now it's noun verb. And so like having to do all of these mental gymnastics,
yes,
linguistics, and having to go through that live did not translate well for me without zero preparation. So it's a beautiful learning experience. There is a learning curve to it, and I highly recommend it because when I lost my Spanish and I regained it, I recognized there is a difference between being able to speak to 100 million people, a couple of 100 million people, to
right,
now being able to understand and communicate with billions of people. I mean, you read Russian and Hebrew, so you already know the difference.
right. Now, my wife well, she's from Maine, but her father was French Canadian, and so she grew up with French, and
See,
she's
yeah,
yeah, she spoke French until she started school. But to this day, when she still says things in English, but she says it the French way.
exactly.
So for example, in French, you don't turn off the light. It's like ferme something, but ferme means to close. You close the light. And I'm thinking it probably goes back when to get rid of the light, you had to close a curtain or something. I don't know, before electricity. I don't know. I don't know why it's like that, but
Gotcha. Like we're probably
they
talking
literally
about
say,
ye ancient times where they had a candle and you had to close the light to turn off the
yeah,
candle fire.
but in English, we don't say close the light. We say turn off the light. Okay. And my
Hmm.
wife will say to me still, will you close the light? Or did you close the light? Now I know what she's saying and I don't correct her. But I noticed that like right from the very beginning when we would talk, she would say things, and I knew her French background, and she would say something, and I'd be like, to me it'd be like kind of cute. It'd be like, oh, okay, that's
Hmm.
cute. She said, close the light, and I can't think of the other things, but that was like the first thing that I latched onto was she's closed the light and open the light, you know. But there are other things like that in French that she um does the same thing in English, but she says it with French words. But also in Spanish and in French and a few other of the Latin based languages, there's gender to the words, which is another layer.
Hmm.
For you
Yeah,
to
exactly. Like
yeah
there's the masculine and feminine forms.
yes
And like the language is ever evolving, and so like the newest Spanish trend to be more gender inclusive is instead of like the masculine and the feminine forms of words, you're now going for like the how would I describe it, like gender neutral forms of
right
words, which like instead of a or an o at the end of the words, a would be more typically associated with the feminine, o would be more typically associated with the masculine.
right
You
Latino
replace
and
it with
Latina, just as examples,
right,
Latino and
exactly. You would
Latina, right.
the replacement would be an E, so it's Latine, or
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah, like I've heard Latin X.
uh,
No Latin person is subscribing to that. That is like some purely like academic,
that's some
some
purely
that is
gentrified
like
that's some purely
purely
gentrified,
like
yeah.
essay language theorists. Like no one colloquially on the streets was like, yeah, shout out to my Latin X's. Like, no, that's not a thing. You'll find the Latines is more like in the LGBTQ community, trans community, where like gender inclusivity is the norm. But like I was mentioning at the show, like we're talking bar jokes here, so we're talking about the
Right.
raunchiest, crudest things you could think of, including all of the above.
Yeah, see, I have a bit that I do every June. Actually, I do it in June, I do it in February, and probably around Cinco de Mayo and St. Patrick's Day. And basically,
Cover
it's
all your
about
bases.
well, basically, it's about Juneteenth, and Juneteenth is not is a it's a black recognized holiday. It's the basically commemorates the last freed slave. Um,
Yep, yep.
and so but it's not real known, and so I have a bit that talks about why it's not popular, and I compare it to Cinco de Mayo and St. Patrick's Day because those are ethnic holidays, but the reason why they're popular in my theory is that they're alcohol based holidays, and so in order for Juneteenth to become popular it needs an alcohol sponsor, and so then
Hennessy.
yeah, see, that's it. And that's part of the thing. Part of the I get the audience to participate. I'll say, if I say St. Patrick's Day, you say, and they'll say Guinness and all these drinks. I say Cinco de Mayo, you'll say they're like tequila, Dos Equis, so that, and I said, so we need I said, but I can't think of any drinks for blacks, something like that. No, start yelling out Hennessy and Colt 45 and stuff like that. And
Go
so,
45 and two zigzags, baby.
yes.
That's all we need on this Juneteenth here. On this Juneteenth.
Yeah, so that's it. And I have it's like a 10 or 15 minute bit. And so but it basically just I say we get rid of February, just give everybody a drinking holiday. And then I go through different groups, marginalized groups, and I give them a drinking holiday. So like the gays don't have Gay Pride Month anymore. They just have one day, one day for drinking. Women don't have Women's Month; they have like one day because again, we only have 12 months. You can't. Then you wind up sharing months. So you might as well just give everybody a day, and that way we can have 365 drinking days. So every group could have their own drinking day, with the exception of the Muslims because they don't drink, so they could be a designated driver. So
For
that's
every holiday. Hey, that's not
yes,
haram at all.
yeah, that's see. So and that's the point. The whole point is that the premise is that people don't know what Juneteenth is because it's not a drinking holiday, and the other subtext to that bit is that everybody, no matter how racist you are, no matter how homophobic you are, no matter how sexist you are, everybody loves their drinking buddy.
Yep.
So yeah, so it doesn't matter. You can have the biggest racist in the company, but he's got this one Hispanic guy who is drinking buddy, and you can't call him a spick. Okay, he can say it, but you can't because he will.
Don't you dare.
That's right. He will defend his
Do it.
drinking buddy to his dying breath because it's his drinking
Don't you dare
buddy.
do it.
Yeah, that's his drinking buddy, but he will not think twice about calling every other Hispanic person, a dirty, so everybody
Because they
loves
can't throw down like my boy. They can't throw down like my dog, man. They can't.
Right.
They can't throw down a bottle of tequila like my man. Like
That's it.
you know what I'm saying? Like I've been there.
Yeah, so everybody loves their drinking buddy, and so that's the subtext of that bit. And what made me think of it was when we started talking about Latin. I do refer to the Latin X's. I said Cinco de Mayo, right? Cinco de Mayo, that holiday is for our Hispanic friends, and I go I'll say Latinos, Latin X's. I'm sorry, Latin tens, and I'll go on because and for some reason you just see the same thing. It's like one of those things. It's a throwaway line instead of Latinx, Latin 10. So it's the same thing. But now.
Also, by the way, a Latin 10 is how we refer to Salma Hayek and Penelope Cruz. All right, that's
Yes,
Sofia Vergara, all Latin 10s.
yes, which that's another. I was talking about the myths about early in my career. I was talking about the myths that that when some people don't hate Blacks and Hispanics, because I was talking about immigration and stuff like that. I said, what is they're afraid of the myths. It's not the actual people, it's the
stereotypes.
Right. So, and I said, and the myth is that Hispanics are taking all the jobs. I said, and that's not true. I said, most of the jobs, they're being given. They're being given away. Okay. They're not coming in and say, I want your job. It's more like, here, take this job. All right. Take this job.
Right. Yeah. Like the way I think of it is like, it's not necessarily like a shoplifting situation where we're, looting for jobs. It's more like a raffle situation where they're actually, giving them away by the boatload. Like, here's your raffle. You want to be a farmer. You want to be a nanny. Here you go. You want to be a constructor. Here you go.
Yeah. And the mother thing is, I said, people have a terrible misconception about this thing's to deport, wanted to deport Hispanics and stuff like that. And I said, and the thing is, we're never going to get rid of every minority in our country, okay, including myself. But that's not happening. I said, and so people are thinking that we're letting in. Damn, I can't remember how I did it. It's because it's 8 years since I've done this bit. But basically, I said all of the people that we let in, they're not all Selma Hayeks. They're not all Penelope Cruzes. They're not all Jessica Albas. I said we're getting like the Ted Cruz's, the can't remember his name now. The senator Marco Rubio. So
Ron DeSantis. Oh,
yes,
man.
DeSantis. So that like it's been like 8 or 9 years since I've done it. People who want to, anybody out there who actually want to see how I did it properly, just go to YouTube, go check out my first special. It's called My Parents Meant Well, and it's in there, and I do it the right way, not the way I just did it because I haven't done it in 8 years.
Congrats on the special.
Yeah, so y'all can check it out. It's 8 years old. That's why I can't think of it now. And you understand what that's like. If somebody if you try to do a bit that you haven't done for like 8 years, you'd be like, you fuck it up.
You just start getting all anxious.
Yeah, and you can't remember the nuances of what made it funny. It's like, okay, so who are your influencers? Because I mean, I think in the green room you mentioned like Eddie Murphy and George Carlin.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, but who?
so in terms of the influences, like the first time I saw comedy was Richard Pryor live in '79. My dad showed me that when I was like 8, and I was like, "Ooh, this piqued my interest." Right after that was like Eddie Murphy Raw, Delirious. And I just remember watching a bunch of George Carlin, and it wasn't until I got to George Lopez where I was like, yeah, this like he looks like me, sounds like me, he actually talks like me. You know, I can relate to him, he's relating to me. Like, I can do this right now. I say that to say, but like I haven't been a fan of George Lopez as of late, unfortunately, from all of the gatekeeping antics that he's been going through. So like he's been
Yeah.
taking a couple of notches down on my top 5 list. But recently, as of late, like dudes like Dave Chappelle, I think is great. To go. And if I were to say like current people that I think are funny as hell, I think dudes like Mark Normand are fantastic. He does give me like Jerry Seinfeld Jr. vibes, but hey, it's working. Go for it. There is that. I feel like a Latin comic that I'm a fan of is Ralph Barbosa. Super
Okay.
dope. And then like outside of that, like nowadays it's really like internet comedians or like like I don't even know like what they would prefer to call themselves, whether they be comics, performers, entertainers, content creators, comedic geniuses. Like I feel like that realm is like where I'm starting to get inspiration from, and I want to tap into. I'm super huge into sketches, and I've never like done my own sketches, but I want to get into that world. So like all the classic sketch shows for me are awesome. Like I was a super fan of SNL. I definitely still want a job there. That's like a dream of mine. In Living Color was great. Mad TV. I was raised off of more Mad TV than SNL. And then there's like Spanish language variety comedy shows like Sábado Gigante, which is like the Spanish version of SNL. It
Right.
ran for like 60 years. Rebelde and a couple of others. I think the Black Lady sketch show was awesome. Michael Shea's
Yeah.
sketch show was awesome. I'm forgetting his name. Tim Robbins. I think you should leave now. That was awesome. I'm just a fan of comedy overall, and I gain inspiration from as much of the bombings and failings as I do from the successes. I feel like that's super important to not just siphon yourself and blind yourself off, tunnel vision yourself off into like one stream of like comedy overall. Like even when stand-up shit on like improv comics, I'm not a fan of that, because when you riff on stage, that's improv, buddy. You're
Right.
improvising
Yeah.
on the spot.
Yeah.
And so all of these influences help me to like make sure I keep like my comedy, not just like the comedy that I perform fresh, but the comedy that I find funny fresh. Nothing sucks more than stale comedy, right? Ugh.
Right. Now, not that I'm connecting the two, but I want to play the second clip because we have 9 minutes to go through, and so I'm just going to randomly throw them
Oh
in.
yeah,
But
please. I
this
forgot that there's more, people. Do you know that there's more to go? Let's all prepare ourselves. Strap in for the cringe, guys.
Here we go. This is the part 2 of 3. Here we go.
To be honest with you, I've been looking at the news, and I realized that being Spanish has its plus sides, because we're immune to a lot of fucking things. And if you don't think about it, point in case, when you go to vacation, the water they tell you not to drink on vacation is the water we drink. That's our water. Serious. And if you look in the news, I've studied this very carefully, guys. Not one Spanish person got diagnosed with Ebola. Not one. We're fucking immune, okay? Give it up for Spanish people. We are fucking immune. We have our germs to deal with, okay? You want us to deal with your shit? No, not the case, buddy. Not today. And I really think that if nuclear warfare were to go down, the 3 things left would be Twinkies, roaches, and Latinos. That's it. Nothing else, nothing more. We reproduce at bunny rabbit speed. And I realize it's because we're tough. At birth, we're bred to be tough warriors, to be, tough mentally, spiritually, physically. And I realized it's because as I was growing up, my parents, they raised me to be tough. They raised me to be a champion of street Tetris. And if you guys don't know what that is, Try fitting an entire family in a 1992 two-door Honda hatchback, and then get back to me. All right, listen. I had more family members than the Wu-Tang Clan, and you're telling me I gotta fit 6 people in this fucking car? Ah, shit. So I'm the second oldest of 6. And that automatically makes me the event coordinator for such events. And I'll be honest, I have to get into my zone. There's no way around this. So I have to put on my headphones, blast my music. My song of choice is Meek Mill's Levels, you know? Levels to the shit. Levels to the shit. Fuck around, fit the whole family in the whip. Lord. That's my choice, you know? And I realized how fucked up you have to rationalize it, because my sister is shaped like the long blue bar that you don't know how to deal with when they pop up. So you just have to place them in there and just deal with them for the rest of the game. And my brother is the weirdly shaped one that just, no matter how you fit it, there's no way you're gonna put him in a place you like, so you just have to hold him off for later. And so he's outside the car, put on hold like the unwanted piece he is, because at the age of 9 is the perfect time for him to have a growth spurt. Fucking selfish of him, man. I'm telling you, he's in the 5th grade, and all of a sudden he wants to morph into the Incredible Hulk. Why, you idiot? Jesus. And so he's trying to get into the Honda hatchback, and I'm telling him, hey, listen here, Hulk. You back the fuck up and wait your turn like everybody else, okay? Give me some time here. I'm working. Shit. Obviously, my parents didn't give a shit about our safeties. So we drove with no seatbelts on, which was a high risk. My sister's over here cramped in the car, lapped up on one of the other kids, just fucking developing scoliosis and shit. and I realized that being in New York they have this big campaign on the trains. I don't know if you guys noticed, against leg spreaders. You guys might be one yourselves. Have you guys ever seen the campaigns? It's like the classic the classic dude taking up way more space than he should, because he wants, his left side and his right side to not have anybody around. And I'm sitting here looking at this thinking, wow, that is my family. My entire family is a family full of leg spreaders. And I would realize this because I'd be the guy to tell them to close their fucking legs. So I'm over here trying to close their legs. Hey, you wanna close these fucking legs? We're cramped. We're tight. I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck, Mom. I will throw you out of this car, okay? You having your legs open is what got us here in the first place. Shit. I'm sorry, I had to get up. I felt the heat around this area.
Oh man.
Now, do you still do that bit about the leg spreading and stuff? Because it's a timeless thing kind of, and it's still an issue out there. Is that something you still do?
I haven't thought about that bit for years, actually. Now that I think of it, it is like evergreen, I guess. My favorite part of that clip was the street Tetris part of it.
Yes.
I feel like that was probably like my crown jewel out of that first year. Now that I revisit it, I kind of want to revisit it more with, like, now that I have more tools and stuff.
Yeah.
Looking back at that bit, it feels like it feels good to like know that that's a good bit,
Yeah, even without
leg
street
spreading though.
Now, because when I heard you say street Tetris, but the way my brain works, I thought of situational Tetris, because you can move that to like almost any situation, not just the car, but almost any kind of situation. But I thought that was really funny. And you talked about your sister being shaped like a board, I think it was, or like a pole.
Like that long. She's skinny and so like that long shape, the 4 blocks together. What do you call it? Just a straight piece, I guess. Yeah.
I have a friend of mine. He has this. I thought it's hilarious. He's a Hispanic comedian, and he talks about his sister. He calls his sister the brick, because her body is like a rectangle, and she gets laid by Mexicans, and so. And so I thought that was. Now he tells it much better than I do, thank goodness. But he's some people, when they have their own jokes, it's like you're just trying to. I feel bad, but he's very funny. He's actually one of my favorite local comedians. He's really funny, really smart. But I love that one bit about when you talked about your sister and the pole. That reminded me of his sister and the brick. So Does your sister know that you think she shapes like a no, I'm just teasing you. No. Well, okay.
She's the
Now,
skinniest one out of all of us, so she's gonna hear about it at some point.
now, do you have now? This is not to get personal. This is just something I ask. Or do you have like a significant other in your life?
Nah.
Okay, the reason I ask it because sometimes, my wife, a lot of times in the beginning I used to run premises by her. Not that I was getting her permission, but I was sharing. I was like, it's more like it's almost like when a baby, like a little boy, goes to the bathroom, he goes to poop for the first time, and he goes out and grabs his mom and says, "Look what I did." And that's how I was with my jokes. I'd write a joke and I'd run and say, "Honey, look what I did," and so she
You
would
just
say,
want to make sure. You just want to make sure, like when you were a kid. Now that you're an adult, you always want to make sure that your poop and your bits pass the vibe check, right? That's all that
exactly.
matters.
And so I was sharing with her, and there was one that I just knew was hilarious. And my wife goes, "That's not funny. That's not." I said, "It is. It really is funny." And she goes, "No, that's not funny." I said, "Honey, I'm telling you, this is funny." She says, "I don't. No, it's not funny."
It's
And I
funny to
said,
everybody but you. It's funny to everybody
and
but you.
yes, and so, and that's what I said. I said, "Other people think it's funny," and she goes, "I don't think so." And so I did it at an open mic. The first time I did an open mic, and I did it just the way I wrote it. And I record almost all of my sets. As a matter of fact, I have terabytes of video,
I believe it.
of me performing. So if I ever die, there's no reason for them not to have some of my comedy clips available. Matter of fact, they're gonna say, "Fuck, we got too much. We got like 12 versions of this one joke
You're gonna
here."
hold the funeral hostage while they play your specials? Oh my god,
Well,
dude, that is next level, dude.
no, here's the deal. I have actually started putting together my funeral clip. What is I have friends of mine. I have friends of mine that said goodbye to me. Oh, here's one friend of mine is an actor, and I hope you'll like this one. A friend of mine is an actor, and he says, I've known GD for a few years. I really like him. Blah blah blah. And then in the middle of his tribute to me, he goes, "And check out my new movie." And he's standing in front of the poster of the movie he's in, and he steps aside and says, "And check out my new movie." And he shows the movie that he's in. And I said, if I die this year, before the movie comes out, that would be like a great thing. That like, I told him, I said,
Shameless plug, really quick.
yeah, just a shameless plug in the middle of my funeral. It's gonna be like, yeah, and check out my new movie. I was like,
Back to grieving. Back to grieving.
yeah, yes, and back to your host, GD Fenderson, who's staying in that coffin there. Actually, it wouldn't be a coffin; being cremated. So I actually have my urn already made. I've had it for years.
I would have gone with the open casket, open mic. I would have been
Oh,
the flow. Like
yeah, but that's so cliche. And actually, when I got my urn, I had no idea. I had no desire to be a comedian. Back when I got my urn, I still thought I was going to be a famous musician. Hi, I'm GD Fenderson, certified forensic humorist. Thank you for watching this episode of Done Way Past Funny with our guest Alvaro Gamboa. Join us as we continue our interview, and when you come back, bring a friend.